I included the the current resolution, my apologies, and that's listed as 12-039, and then two drafts. One's a clean copy and one's tracking changes. And so I'm happy to take any questions, but that's the approach I took.
Good. Questions for Bob on this? Thank you.
Pretty self-explanatory.
I got a couple of questions.
Aaron, go ahead.
On the new one, the very front one, on page 6.
Let me get to it if I can. Yes, sir.
On the very bottom of number B. No question.
I'm sorry, the very bottom one. Which one?
Section 6 procedure.
Page 6.
Oh, I'm on.
No question, motion shall be debated.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the,
I was looking at the track changes version of the page.
Okay, I was looking to you.
Yes.
Section 6 procedure. Number B.
Yes.
No question on a motion shall be debated or put unless the motion, shall be put to vote?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if once somebody makes a motion,
Yes.
you cannot continue discussion until you got a second.
It should be put to vote.
That is a carryover from the previous resolution. That language is unaffected from that resolution. I take that to mean put to vote. And I think that's an expression of Robert's Rules of Orders.
Yeah.
Rules of Order, excuse me.
Okay.
And so, yes.
Yeah,
Just
right.
saying, happy to add to vote to that if that's your preference.
I just think it would clean it up.
Well, it makes the people who aren't really understanding the nuances of Robert's Rules of Order, you know, it makes it easier for the layperson.
That's the purpose of this here today. I didn't really expect that we were going to move to adopt the resolution. I'm interested in any kind of, as we narrow it towards the end, in putting in finishing touches for clarity's sake. And I view that as one of those.
That's good.
While you're on that item, Section B requires that the chairman restate or state the motion after it's seconded, which is customarily something we don't do, so I don't want to leave that in there.
That's a Robert's Rule of Order, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the chairman. They could, a lot of times they'll have the clerk read back the motion that was made.
Well, my question is customarily we don't do it, so we want to leave it in the rules or not.
I work for a clerk.
Well, what we did based on last time we were here, it had said clerk, and Supervisor Chapman invited me to change that to be chairman or chairman's designee in a few other provisions, and I made those changes as is reflected in this. And so if it's your pleasure to put chairman or chairman's designee, that would be consistent with what you did in some other respects.
Yeah, and that allows, you know, because a lot of times if a motion's been made and we've had like a roundabout discussion and everybody's kind of confused as to what the original motion is, oftentimes what the chair will do is ask the clerk to read back the motion because she's got to go back through 3 or 4 pages of her notes to find where the original motion was made. So I can tell you right now, it's impossible for the chairman to be able to do that because he's not going to have the notes. So for him to designate the clerk to do that would be appropriate.
So to avoid violating this policy on a routine basis, could I suggest that we change the term shall to may?
Yes. Because a lot of times it's very simple, but like Jim said, sometimes you get off and have to go back and...
Well, a lot of times the chairman will say, you know, you've heard the motion, there's no further debate, you know.
Right.
Cindy, do you have a question?
I just want to say that sometimes it does get really confusing, and it's very helpful to even have county council and CAO kind of regroup and restate.
And we've done that from time to time.
Yes.
We've
Very
kind
helpful.
of asked you what the
Besides, you
motion
might
is
not
or
understand
stated
what
what we
you're
think the
saying.
motion
And it gets confusing at times. But I think Richard is correct. In order to make sure you don't have, because there's always going to be one person who's going to be a stickler and say, well, you violated policy number what? On page 6. So using may gives the discretion.
Okay. Mrs. Spencer.
Mr. Burns was correct. This did come up earlier on the January 27th meeting when you were discussing approving a new conflict of interest. I brought up that the municipal codes and your rules of personal, that none of them were in sync. So I'm glad to see that work was done on this. However, Can We Help has many concerns about. So if rather than, my suggestion is we can take time and we can go over our concerns. There are many. Or Can We Help can put them in a letter to you. And I think that would probably be clearer and easier to go to as you go through all of your changes. There are many. Some of them we have major concerns with. So if you're going to table this, I would be glad to present it in written form. Although if you're not going to present it and you intend to pass it today, I would like time to.
I can't tell you what we're going to do today. It's up to me, it's up to the board, and I'm not going to let you go off for 30 minutes, on all these little details. It's up to the board to make that decision, not you. If you have a comment to make, within 3 minutes, fine, but we're not going to spend 20 minutes listening to your objections to the policy.
Concerns. There are legitimate concerns on the changes that you want to make. So
you should have had something prepared to hand out today, would be my suggestion.
Well,
I would assume we're going to pass this today. Maybe we're not. It's up to the board.
we can stop and make copies for you of our. I mean, it's simple. If you can read my writing, you can. They're all here. We can stop and make copies of this, and I can hand it to you. I am prepared today to address those concerns.
I'm not prepared to give you
I know you aren't.
a lot of time.
I know you're not. You don't want to give me a minute. So no, it's okay. I understand your prejudice. So I will prepare. If you intend to go forward with it, the public has concerns about.
No, the public don't. Mrs. Spencer does.
Can We Help? I'm here on behalf of Can We Help, which represents voting constituents.
No, this board represents the board of the Lassen County. You represent Can We Help?
Oh, please. So if you're going to table it, that's fine. If you're going to proceed to go over the changes, I am going to have.
If you want to copy that, get it to us. That would be fine. Anybody else? Okay. Aaron.
On page 10, it talks about
Let me catch up to you. Page 10 where?
under procedure for hearings.
Yes, sir.
Number 2.
Page 2?
Yeah.
Yes.
Voluntarily.
You talked about the disqualification issue again?
Yeah, voluntarily
Yeah.
and involuntarily.
I did not reach a conclusion on the involuntary disqualification other than that which I tentatively expressed to you once before, and that is that it's my belief that a court could essentially restrain someone from participating in a vote when they would otherwise have a right to. I don't think we've ever seen that occur, but I believe that's the genesis of that language in there.
May not just be the courts, it could be the FPPC could issue a letter
Yes.
saying that Supervisor X, Y, or Z should not participate in a proceeding because of whatever the issue may be, and that would be really an involuntary disqualification because the board member may want to be
Yes.
participating.
And so I chose not to excise that because of the possibility that it could occur.
I'm just curious on what that is.
And how does that work? I mean, if I want to make a statement that I'm can't because of a conflict of interest, and I go up to somebody. What is that? Public, how can you defer that to me as a?
That was an issue that Supervisor Chapman brought up, and that is if there's a board member that is disqualified from participating in the making of the decision because of a conflict of interest, under 18707, the FPPC regs, of course, it speaks to the supervisor being obliged to step down from the dais, but it also permits expressly, because I remember that discussion, it expressly permits the supervisor to speak during public comment just like anyone else would be permitted to do. So I think, yeah, at the podium. I think what it does is it's intended to strike a balance between, and I think we may have seen that once before in Supervisor Wasik at one point.
Supervisor Hanson did too. But I would say that was true up until maybe a year or two ago, because we saw that frequently. But in the more recent ethics training and stuff, that attorney that comes and presents that, there's been a number of rulings, both by courts and by like the FPPC, that have admonished board members being able to step down from the dais for, a declared conflict, then go sit in the audience. And the issue that at least was drummed in at those trainings was that board members can sit there in the audience and make faces or give signals or do whatever they can to influence the behavior of their colleagues that they've just stepped down from, and how that had apparently happened in other areas. And now they're saying, and whether the law in that section you're talking about has caught up to the practicality, they're now pretty much making it clear that you need to leave the room so that there's no influence by the disqualified member upon the other members. And that, I can say, that's only kind of been in the last couple trainings that we've seen that emphasized. And so
Well,
I don't think we want to be encouraging something. I think if you're going to be disqualified, maybe the policy should be you go outside and there's no questions. But I know that in the past we've had board members. I mean, Brian Dolly, there was a property. He had property within. It was a planning issue, and he obviously had an interest in what was happening. And he sat in the audience, and I think either he or his family gave some testimony. I mean, Jack did that on several occasions that I can recall. So it's not. It wasn't. It wasn't like all the time, but it has happened.
I looked last week on the FPPC site itself under 18707 to see what the current standard law was, and that regulation stands.
Stands, okay.
It does. It stands. The quote I specifically cited the section in the track changes margin because I knew that was an issue that you wanted to know.
Well, no, I'm just saying it, and that's good to know, because the next time they have one of those trainings, it'd be nice if you or somebody could be there and could, at least provide that clarification to the guy who's doing the training, because everybody.
So, while I appreciate the desire to not create a scenario where that perception can occur, where you've got a board member that steps down and then advocates to the other four through the adoption of that kind of a policy and the procedures, I'm not certain that we could do that. And the reason, my initial reaction is the supervisor that conflicts, that gets down and wants to make a comment, is expressing their First Amendment right.
Well, maybe what we put in there is not necessarily do that, but make reference to that section, make reference to the ethics training, and make reference to the fact that the board members and the board should use whatever appropriate judgments necessary to determine how a board member stays or leaves, and leave it to those sections to interpret, but not mandate one way or the other, but at least make everybody aware of what the code sections are, what the training is.
I think I could include language in there that says just those things. It's a balance between the First Amendment right of the supervisor to speak.
But it puts everybody on notice.
Yes, and it's also the obligation of the supervisor pursuant to the PRA to step down and disqualify themselves. At the same time, participation as a speaker should be carefully considered before such a presentation is made, as it might impact perception on the proceedings. Something along those lines I'm certain I can come up with and propose in the next draft to you. Did I answer your question, though?
I feel like we're asking now.
Aaron's question.
It was. And then on page 9, Bob,
Page 9.
part B, number 3.
I'm sorry, B3?
Yeah, B3.
Yes, sir.
You have the clerk of the board should operate a timing device. Susan,
You know, that was intended to be, in another portion, that one got past me. In another portion, I changed it, but that one
yeah, you
got
changed
past me.
one,
It's-
but not this one.
No, I appreciate that. So it would be the chairman of the chairman's designee.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for that.
What else, Aaron?
I picked up on that.
No.
didn't I, Susan?
You did.
Double vote.
I hope she didn't bring her little clock with her.
Okay.
I have one that's
Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, and it kind of falls in line with the public comment stuff where we talk about, you know, the limitations from the floor, from the public, but then as it relates to board members. But you go back to bottom of page 2, number 8, where you have the unagendized report by board members, normally following the public comment period. Then we have in parentheses, you know, guidelines of 3 minutes per board member. I think that guideline, that parentheses should just be struck. You know, I think what needs to be done is it's the chair, if you have a board member who is taking, you know, just going on and not, you know, the chair is responsible for reining that in, or the board can, other board members can say, well, Mr. Chairman, you know, cut off debate, because most cases, the reports are fairly short, but you take him, it's in your RC. So Aaron goes to an RC meeting, and I know Brian used to come back from RC all the time, and it would be a 20-minute, you know, presentation from the meeting. Now, we send him down there to go to the meeting to tell us, bring back the information, and if he has to do that in 3 minutes, plus anything else that he has in his district to report on, the poor guy's at a disadvantage. Why even send him to the meeting? So I think that, you know, depending upon the number of meetings, I've attended as many as 5 meetings representing the board in a given week that I need to report on, and to try to do that in 3 minutes isn't going to happen. But then there's other weeks there's nothing to report on, so you have no report, so you balance it out. And the other theory is board members are here, we represent a constituency of 5,000 residents and about 2,500 voters roughly each. And if you want to do 3 minutes per person, then you can take that and multiply. I'm not saying that you get 75,000 minutes.
No, Jim, you don't need that much.
But I think, though, the point being is that the board's responsibility is a lot different than the level of responsibility from the public at large. And I think the 3-minute rule is to design, if you have 100 people show up on an item and they each talk for an hour, you're going to be several days in the meeting. That's where the 3-minute rule, and there's even the extent in our Robert's Rules of Order that if you have public members who are repeating what previous public members had already expressed, you can cut off that discussion. The idea is the issue and the point information needs to come forward. If it becomes repetitive, the chair needs to cut that off and shut it down so we can proceed. So board members function a lot different than public at large. And I think that needs to be reflected, and I think we need to strike that from.
Okay, we're gonna-
Yeah, I'm not certain what the genesis of that is.
Well,
That's
that
been in
went
there
back,
and carried
you
over.
know, that went back a couple revisions ago, I believe, back.
Well, and I think I do know, at least I'd be speculating, but in the Brown Act, there's reference to the fact that individual board members, even though it's not on the agenda, may make a, quote, brief, unquote, presentation about other matters. And I'm guessing that that was the basis for that. And so...
Well, staff reports, I mean, if you want to put it, do you make staff reports, you cannot exceed 3 minutes, so you have a complex topic, you know, a staff report could take 20 minutes. And, I mean, so I think it's really up to the discretion of the chair, and if the other board members feel the chair is not being attentive, then they can intervene and raise the question. So, yeah, we could Chapmanize the meetings, but it's better than being hemp-hilled.
Any others?
Any other questions?
Mr. Elmo's got another one, I can just see it.
Yes, that's what you extend it to the end of the meeting. No, we keep this here, but we take out the 3-minute thing, reference 3 minutes to 4 minutes. What I'm just saying is you don't, I mean, putting that kind of an artificial limit on is crazy.
Well, only for Jim Chapman.
Or the district too, yeah.
Any others?
Yes.
Then I expect I would make those changes and then come back to you with probably an eye for a little bit bit more of an expectation of adoption.
Mr. Spence, do you have a fast question?
Why does it always have to be fast? I don't speak fast, Bob. May I have permission to give Can We Help's concerns directly to, since he's going to revise this, may I give it directly to Mr. Burns?
Yes, you may.
I think that would probably help because, didn't mention it before, but there are Brown Act violations in here which you need to be corrected prior to passing it. So,
Okay, if you have something you wish to give Mr. Burns,
thank you.
go for it. Okay, we're gonna table this till a future date.
Yes, no action today.
No action.
Changes were proposed, and I've got that information, and thank you.
This is a working document as we
Yes.
live. All right, and I think we're at juvenile hall. Jennifer, you still here?
I am. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Clerk, Jennifer Browning, Chief Probation Officer. I just wanted to update you on our juvenile hall since there were some significant changes. One of those being in the legislature right now is AB 403, which is the continuum of care reform. It's changing the way that foster children are placed into congregate care in group homes for 12 to 18 months. We will now only have 6 to 9 months with which to place children, and it needs to be in more of a family-like program. I've been working on the state level with this legislation representing small and rural counties to make sure that when they enact this legislation that we're going to be able to get some assistance. In a small county, it's really hard to recruit foster parents. It's really hard to recruit some of the lower level care that we need for some of our juveniles that we place. We have a very difficult time. Our kids are typically spread across the state. We have to send them out for specialized services because we just don't have the capacity to offer those within a rural county. Sometimes it has to do with being able to have qualified personnel to provide specific services. And part of that is, I believe, the state's responsibility to help us. So within the legislation for probation's piece, they have added, and you guys have this in your packet, number 4, C4, which is to identify strategies to address the systemic challenges specific to small and rural counties in meeting the needs of probation foster youth in need of placement and or treatment services. So the state's going to definitely help us with that. And they are also going to provide technical assistance related to the implementation of this section to any requesting county probation department. And when it comes time, I can definitely say that we will be probably requesting some technical assistance because it's going to be very costly to recruit that many foster parents to be able to take the probation youth as well as the child welfare youth that we place within our county. With the continuum of care reform changing group home care to a short-term program, 6 to 9 months, environmental alternatives group home operator Eric Perry had to look at the design of his program. His program is a 3-tier program. It goes typically from the 12 to 18 months. He's had to look at cutting that back, and when he cut that back to do a 6 to 9 month program, he looked at the way that people transition through the 3 group homes that he has within the county. What he's done now is turn that into a 2 transition piece, so they will transition from a more intensive home to a less intensive home. When he looked at his operations for efficiencies, he chose not to renew the lease with the juvenile hall because that was the most expensive lease that he had. So as I've told the board before, if we did not have a lease with environmental alternatives to occupy the space for the group home, we would move our juvenile probation department down to the group home. And we are currently in the process of doing that. All of our juvenile probation officers are now housed down there. We have some desks down there for them. We have some computer access for them, although we're working on hardwired computers, so it's been a little bit difficult, but they are in the transition of being able to move down there. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had all of that information, and if you had any questions, to be able to answer those.
Questions for Jennifer?
So in 2021, after the legislature gets a report on this new program, and they find it's no good, what's going to happen is we revert back to the old ways? I mean, this is like a big experiment almost, it seems like to me, this no net underneath.
It is in a way. going to change things, but I believe the focus is more on taking higher level group home care and making sure that we're not housing children there for more than what is needed. So they're kind of pressing down onto the group homes to make sure that they're providing the services that these kids need within the 6 to 9 months. And then we're taking and stepping them down to a more family-like environment. I don't know what the outcomes are going to be, but for probation, in our benchmark language, in 2021, we're going to reevaluate the program. And if group homes are meeting those needs for the short-term residential treatment centers, then everything's going to be okay. If they're not meeting those needs and this is just not working, that's our ability as probation to be able to go back to the table and say, this isn't working, we need to design something else.
Would you know that sooner than 5 years though?
Would we know that within 5 years?
Sooner than 5 years?
I think that we would know that within 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And if it looks like it's going to be going to a direction that we're not going to meet the benchmarks set out for probation within AB 403, then we would be having those discussions with the California Department of Social Services to be able to see what we needed to change to meet our needs. There's 2 sets of the benchmark language and just a brief of what the AB 403 is for the continuum of care reform. It's about 250 pages. I didn't want to bring all of that to you. So there's one that's probation implementation language, and then there's some, the next set is just a little bit of an overview of the whole thing, and it's more specific to child welfare. So I think one of the hardest things that probation is going to have is demystifying the stigma of probation youth in foster family agencies and getting foster parents. Within Lassen County, we have 2 foster parents who will take probation youth. Our kids are typically no different than child welfare kids. They all have the same behaviors and the same needs. So it's going to be a huge effort to recruit enough foster families to be able to meet the needs of Lassen County.
How many you need?
How many do?
Ballpark figure.
I don't have like a lot of numbers on child welfare side, but I would say that you're going to need at least 20 really good, solid foster families that will take both probation and child welfare youth. Can I add to that? I was going to say Melody could probably add a lot to the child welfare piece too.
There's been a lot of focus on what's the best thing to do with kids who get removed from their parents for a variety of reasons. And studies continue to show that children removed from their families don't have good outcomes, and often when they turn 18, they go right back to their families anyway. And the same is true of kids in group homes. And so there's a lot of scrutiny both at the federal level and the state level to ensure that these kids are placed in appropriate settings. Child welfare has been on a real track to place as many kids as possible with family members, or what they call nephrons, the non-related extended family members. So there's like really good friends of the family who know the kids know them, they have a relationship with the parents, so that the parents and the children don't lose that bond. And they've done a very good job. The bulk of our child welfare kids are now placed with family members or extended family members. And we're hoping that we'll be able to have some of that kind of stuff going on with probation kids too as they come back out of group homes. And the group homes can set that groundwork by giving them some of the basic skills they need, whatever punishment they need to have, whatever goes on there, and then bring them back, if not to their family homes, to something close to their family, so that that relationship gets restored and that eventually they can go back home. Our wraparound program is a big support for all of that. Helping kids who return to the family homes or extended family homes or even a foster home, if that's the case. So, and it will be under a lot of scrutiny, and yes, the review is in 5 years, but the Department of Social Services is always open to hearing from probation or anyone else who wants to talk about the issues they're having with placements.
They've been very cooperative in working with the group of chiefs that were selected to be on this committee. There's the Chief Haight from Riverside, there's Chief Salio from San Luis Obispo, representing the medium-sized counties, and then myself representing rural counties. They've been very open to some of our ideas and looking at helping us to meet these needs. And then I would also say that in the end, when we complete our move down at the juvenile hall, we will have an open house and invite everybody so that you can come and see what the new space looks like.
Are you glad to have your space back?
You know, I'm very glad to have our space back. It's been a difficult move. The juvenile probation officers, I really have to commend them for the way that they've dealt with just a move. It was rather quick. We couldn't get everything done in the very beginning. We've done a lot of changes down there, and they've just worked right through it. So right now they have limited computers that are connected to the county drives, and they're just really plugging through that. So I really appreciate that, and I know that they're doing a great job down there. And having that space there has been really nice so far. We've been able to just easily go back and forth from juvenile hall to probation. We've covered a couple of shifts in control so that we haven't had to call somebody else in, or we haven't had
Well, that was
to use
one
any
of the
overtime.
big advantages, if you need to back up, have an immediate backup, you have some staffing there that you can deploy if necessary. We have so that's good.
Absolutely. So it's been wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for your report.
Thank you.
Very good. Richard?
Okay, 3 items. One, Supervisor Hemphill mentioned the meeting we had on the vagrants, I guess the proper term to use, near the city of Susanville in the county jurisdiction. And it was quite an interesting meeting. I think we'll be reporting much more to the board, full board, as we go on. But I think the essence of it is that we're going to have to try to figure out a way with all the parties involved to strike somewhat of a balance. We've got, I think the county has some sort of responsibility to protect private property owners from trespass, vandalism, and so forth. Those property owners also have some responsibility to protect their own property. I think we have some responsibility to make our community environment where people don't feel threatened by walking down the paths by the river. At the same time, there has to be some sensitivity to that vagrant population.
Well, now that we're
Has
going to be
nowhere else to
locating
go.
several of those kind of offices, like probation and others, right there by that path, that will make that section of the trail maybe a little bit more
Less hospitable
more hospitable.
to my clientele.
To the public to use.
So, anyway, I think the point is there's going to be a lot of balances that need to be struck. There's not one solution. All the agencies need to be involved. I actually think kind of the city's approach of just zoning them out of the city, I don't think does anything to solve the problem other than put it on our part. And I'm hoping that we can encourage the city to engage in the problem and help us solve it. That's one thing. As far as I was hoping Pete was going to still be here. I just wanted to mention, the one guy or one of the people, not to diminish our people at the animal shelter that work hard every day. Pete Heimbigner oversees that entire operation, and often has to be the bad guy out there. Does a really good job at that facility, and I think he's primarily responsible for the improvements out there. And I just wanted to give him a shout out for that.
He didn't get any flowers.
Right. Yeah, I don't think
He's a good bad guy.
yeah, he's a good bad guy. And in fact, I went on a call with him last Friday about some animals that were apparently being neglected, and he often does that, nights, weekends, and so forth. So I wanted to recognize him for that. Employee picnic is today, beginning immediately when we finish here at the courthouse. On the lawn of the courthouse. It's an employee.
Did you get permission to use the water? And you're not overwhelming parking, I hope.
And you don't have a bar.
And there's no bar. There's a taco bar, right?
There is a taco bar.
You can park at county clerk.
They'd have good attendance if you had a bar.
Right.
When we announced that we were going to do it today, somebody wanted to rent it yesterday and tomorrow.
more. You guys are not supposed to be having fun.
Yeah, that's right. Or not.
Yeah, this is not.
Good. This is not fun.
Is that it, Richard?
That's all I've got.
Okay. Yeah, good. That's lunch.